Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the special agenda of the special council meeting, Thursday, February 2nd. And this is an orientation, one of several that we will be doing for council. And this afternoon, we have our friends from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Integrity Commissioner, and then a review of the Code of Conduct by our own staff. So I'll start off looking for an adoption of the agenda as printed. Deputy Mayor Richardson, Councillor Ashmore. All in favor? And that's passed. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest on anything on the agenda today? Seeing none, should any arise during the course of the meeting, please advise the chair and we'll deal with them accordingly. We'll move right into item 4, which is presentations. And we have from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Sophia Sheik, Lisa Harvey, and Keely Ducharme. Welcome and thank you, and please carry on.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. My colleagues and I would like to thank you for the invitation to present today at your council orientation. If we do have enough time at the end of our presentation, we're happy to answer any questions you may have. But please note that this presentation will be provided to each of you, which also includes our contact information with any questions you may have in the future. Just going to share my screen here so we can get the presentation up. All right. So we want to express our congratulations to you for taking an interest in your community and in local government and for being elected or re-elected to municipal council. We are sure that your experience over the next 4-year term will be exciting, challenging, and rewarding. This slide deck has been prepared as a companion to the revised Ontario Municipal Councillors Guide. Neither document is intended to replace provincial legislation, but they are tools for your toolkit of resources and information that can assist you in your role as an elected official. These slides are meant to be a summary of some of the sections in the Ontario Municipal Councillors Guide and should not be relied upon for legal or official purposes. We want to stress that we are not lawyers and that you should always consult the legislation and regulations, and when necessary, municipal staff should seek advice from the municipality's lawyer. We will not be able to cover every aspect of your role and responsibilities as an elected official, but our hope is that it provides you with a better understanding and improves your comfort level. So before we begin, I would like to share a video from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honourable Steve Clark. So I'm just going to have to stop sharing and then share again to show the video. So just one moment. So my apologies, I'm having a little bit of troubles pulling up the video itself. Just one moment. All right, I think I have it up and going. Please let me know if you cannot hear the sound on the video.
I can't hear the sound.
The closed captions are en français.
Okay, my apologies. It looks like the sound is not working on the video. I could try one more thing, troubleshooting here. If that doesn't work, we'll just carry on.
Maybe it's not meant to be.
My apologies, everyone. It seems that I cannot get the sound working on the video. If it's okay with everyone, I will carry on with the presentation.
Please do.
All right. So, as previously mentioned, the material provided during our training is based on the information contained in the Municipal Counselor's Guide. The guide is intended to give a summary of complex matters. It does not include all details and does not take into account local facts and circumstances. For example, it includes references to specific sections in the legislation, but other provisions of legislation are often relevant. The guide refers to or reflects laws and practices that are subject to change. Municipalities and councillors are responsible for making local decisions that are in compliance with the law, such as applicable statutes and regulations. The guide, as well as any links or information from other sources, is not a substitute for specialized legal or professional advice. Anyone using the information from the guide is responsible for any use or application of this guide. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing administers approximately 50 statutes. Today's presentation will primarily focus on the Municipal Act 2001, which is the primary piece of legislation governing municipalities in Ontario. This map shows our geography. In our Kingston office, we have staff working in the areas of local governance, land use planning, and housing. Our Eastern Municipal Services Office is one of 5 Ministry Municipal Service offices. Offices are located in Sudbury, Thunder Bay, London, and Toronto. We in the Municipal Services offices are your primary point of contact within our ministry and your portal to other ministries as well. We try to help build municipal capacity through advice and training on elections, accountability and transparency, on asset management practices, municipal shared services, community improvement plans, revenue and planning tools, financial management practices, service delivery reviews, on land use planning to assist in fostering accountable local decision making and promote the use of existing planning tools. We also provide advice regarding government initiatives, identify and disseminate best practices, partner with municipalities and others for common goals, as well as help build effective relationships. So today we're going to be going over the following 6 categories. So this is an outline of the presentation. So section 1, we're going to be focusing on role of council, councillor, and staff. In Ontario, a council is required to have a minimum of 5 members, one of whom is the head of council. The role of council is outlined in the Act under section 224. It is the role of council to represent the public and to consider the well-being and interests of the municipality, develop and evaluate the policies and programs of the municipality, determine which services the municipality provides, ensure that administrative and controllership policies, practices, and procedures are in place to implement the decisions of council, ensure the accountability and transparency of the operations of the municipality, including the activities of the senior management of the municipality, maintain the financial integrity of the municipality, and lastly, carry out the duties of council under the Municipal Act or any other act. Depending on the municipality, the head of council may have different titles. It's up to each council to decide its composition. For example, the head of council could be a mayor or reeve, and in an upper tier municipality, the head of that council might be a regional chair or a county warden. The role of head of council is outlined in the Act under Section 225. It is the role of the head of council to provide leadership to council, preside over council meetings so that its business can be carried out efficiently and effectively, provide information and recommendations to council with respect to the role of council, represent the municipality at official functions, and carry out the duties of the head of council and under the Municipal Act or any other act. It is also the role of head of council to act as chief executive officer of the municipality, which is not the same as the chief executive officer of a corporation and is separate from the role of chief administrative officer. As chief executive officer, the head of council has certain responsibilities as outlined under the Act under Section 226.1. Upholding and promoting the purposes of the municipality, promoting public involvement in the municipality's activities, acting as the representative of the municipality both within and outside the municipality, and promote the municipality locally, nationally, and internationally, and also participate in and fostering activities that enhance the economic, social, and environmental well-being of the municipality and its residents. With all of these responsibilities, the head of council has a high public profile and a leading role. Part of the role is balancing citizen expectations. However, it is important to remember that council decisions are made by the entire council. The council as a whole is the decision-making body of the corporation. The head of council, just like other council members, has one vote and does not have the power to make decisions for the municipality by themselves without the agreement of council. Sometimes, due to weighted voting in upper tiers, some members have more than one vote. The head of council is also required to sign all council-approved bylaws and contracts. Councillors have several roles that may overlap. For example, you have a representative, policymaking, and stewardship role to play in your municipality. The issues may be complex and controversial, and many decisions you make will have long-term consequences that may extend beyond your 4-year term. Any decisions should be made in the context of your municipality's plans for the long-term health and welfare of your community. In your role as a representative, you were elected by your constituents to represent their views when dealing with issues that come before council. However, your constituents have many views and opinions, and you cannot represent all of them all of the time. You will have to consider a variety of opposing interests and make decisions that will not be popular with everyone when dealing with different issues. You should use your judgment and decide based on the best interests of the municipality as a whole. In practice, there is no single correct approach to the representative role, and on many issues, you may find that you fall somewhere between two opposing viewpoints. Be sure to familiarize yourself with any policies or protocols that your municipality may have in place regarding the handling of complaints and citizen inquiries. Although you may want to find some way of helping, remember to consult municipal staff. Working as a team with the rest of council and staff will contribute to making your time on council a success. If your municipality does not have a policy for handling citizen inquiries, complaints, and frequently asked questions, you are encouraged to work with council and staff to develop such a policy. You may wish to refer to the Ontario Ombudsman's tip sheet or your neighboring municipalities for best practices when developing a local process. Furthermore, there may be circumstances where decisions are made by designated staff that operate at arm's length from the municipality, and where it could be inappropriate for elected officials to interfere or to be seen to be interfering. Examples of this would include decisions made by the fire chief, the chief building official, or the medical officer of health. A councillor who has made promises that cannot be kept may lose credibility with his citizens and strain the working relationship with staff. Some council decisions are routine. Others establish general principles to help guide future actions. Those are often considered policy decisions. Some policies can be specific, such as a bylaw requiring dogs to be kept on leashes in public areas, and others can be broader and more general, such as an approval of an official plan. How is policy made? This slide details 8 steps in the development of policies. In many cases, council refers a policy issue to a committee of council to take advantage of the committee's expertise in a particular area or to reduce council's workload. In practice, policy making is sometimes less orderly than described because of various factors: a rapid changing environment, the complexity of issues facing local government, and the difficulty in singling out problems that require more immediate attention, differing and sometimes strongly held views by stakeholders and members of the public, the lack of time to identify all possible alternatives and to conduct detailed research and analysis, the legal and financial limits on what council may do, and the complexity of implementing policies and developing mechanisms to monitor and evaluate them. Council is the primary policy-making body of the municipality. The administration is responsible for carrying out council's policy decisions. The two roles are distinct, but there can be much overlap. Although staff is responsible for implementing a policy, council may wish to develop appropriate reporting mechanisms to help ensure that the policies are being carried out as intended and as effectively as possible, and so that council can follow implementation progress. Council's objectives are to ensure that the municipality's financial and administrative resources are being used as efficiently as possible. There is a fine line between council's overlap stewardship of the municipality and the administration's management of day-to-day activities. Generally, council monitors the implementation of its approved policies and programs, but the practical aspects of its implementation and administration are a staff responsibility. To be effective in the stewardship role, council may wish to have processes in place to help ensure that policies adopted by council are being implemented, staff are administering services and programs as council intended, rules and regulations are being applied correctly and consistently, funds are being spent only as authorized, and the municipality's resources, financial and otherwise, are being used appropriately and as efficiently as possible. Establishing and following such policies and guidelines helps council leave the day-to-day details for staff to manage. Council is freer to deal with exceptional situations, ensure that policies are current, and listen to issues raised by the public to represent the broader community interest. Once you are familiar with the policies currently in place, council can monitor and measure the municipality's administrative effectiveness and efficiency. With input from municipal staff, council can determine whether the policies are functioning well or if changes are necessary. As part of this process, council may wish to define corporate objectives and set goals and priorities, establish clear administrative practices, provide specific guidelines and directions to staff on the applications of those policies, delegate appropriate responsibilities to staff, establish a personal management policy that emphasizes the recruitment, hiring, evaluation, training, and development of staff, ensure that policies with respect to most operations of the municipality are in place with special note to mandatory policies required by the Act, develop protocols for the flow of information between council and staff, as well as consider establishing a protocol for sharing approaches with other local governments and Indigenous communities that share a common interest in community health, culture, and economy. Relationship building early with Indigenous communities is the key to effective partnerships down the road. A municipality may appoint a chief administrative officer, and the Act under Section 229 sets out the role. Exercising general control and management of the affairs of the municipality for the purpose of ensuring the efficient and effective operation of the municipality and performing such other duties as are assigned by the municipality. The function of the CAO within the municipality is generally akin to the role of a chief executive officer within a business framework. The CAO is responsible for the general management of the day-to-day operations of the municipality, which may include developing and implementing appropriate internal administrative policies, practices, and procedures to ensure the efficient, effective, and accountable operation of the municipality. Just as Section 224 of the Act outlines the role of council, Section 227 sets out the role of staff. It is the role of the officers and employees to implement council's decisions, and establish administrative practices and procedures to carry out council's decisions. Undertake research and provide advice to council on the policies and programs of the municipality. Carry out other duties required under the Municipal Act or any act, and other duties assigned by the municipality. Some officers of the municipality, such as the clerk and treasurer, chief, building official, and fire chief, have statutory obligations. To help staff in meeting council's expectations, councils could provide clear policy decisions, directions, and expectations, adopt policies that complement and reinforce staff efforts to improve administrative operations, consult with staff before deciding on policies and programs, and be prepared for council meetings. As a councillor, you can help your staff by treating staff respectively and considerately, directing inquiries through the appropriate processes established by the municipality, and providing clear direction to staff. Staff, in turn, could provide well-organized agendas and support with supporting materials, provide advice on policy, identifying the costs and benefits for the community in human and financial terms, and implement council decisions as effectively and professionally as possible. Both council and staff have different roles within the municipality, but their roles have common goals and purposes. Council generally represents the community and sets the policy direction for the municipality. Staff provides the research and expert advice to help council in their decision-making process. Once council makes a decision, staff has general responsibility to implement the policy of council, for example, through administering and delivering services and programs to the community under the general direction of the CAO. The CAO, staff, and council rely on one another to move the municipality forward. Both council and the CAO provide leadership. Council provides political leadership on behalf of the residents. They are the voice of the people to reflect public opinion and to be given voice to public concerns. The CAO, on the other hand, provides leadership to the organization. The relationship between the CAO, staff, and council is interconnected, and it is important for council members and staff to respect one another's roles so that they can serve the public in an effective and efficient manner. Municipalities must have a policy on the relationship between members of council and municipal staff. A strategic plan can be considered an essential part of municipal governance. Strategic planning is a process an organization uses to define a direction and make decisions about allocating resources, both financial and staff resources. It helps council to develop strategies, goals, objectives, and action plans to achieve the future it desires. It is forward-thinking and proactive, and it can be a guide to decision-making, project planning, and budgeting. Becoming familiar with your municipality's strategic plan is an effective way of understanding both the organization and the broader environment in which you will be working. Your municipality's administrative, financial, and planning decisions should reflect and support the strategic plan. Decisions, both popular and unpopular, are more easily made when seen in the context of your municipality's broader long-term strategy. The plan is a framework that encourages consistency in municipal decision-making among both councillors and staff. When developed with public input, the plan represents a shared view of the municipality's future and encourages public commitment to achieving it. A municipality may wish to measure its success over time and review the plan periodically to ensure that it still aligns with current issues, challenges, and realities. Succession planning is becoming increasingly important as we see baby boomers age and move into retirement. Succession planning can be carried out to ensure when key personnel leave, the municipality can continue to deliver necessary programs and services with minimal disruption. Succession planning programs can offer challenging and rewarding career possibilities and empower current employees by helping them to develop the skills and qualifications they may need to move into more senior positions. Councils may wish to consider the following suggestions as they develop a succession plan. The scope of the succession planning program, designing a plan that works for your municipality, growth expectations for the municipality, staff human resource assessment, upcoming retirement, staff interested in skills development and workplace advancement, key positions that are integral to the smooth operation of the municipality, like the chief administrative officer, clerk, treasurer, etc., recruitment and training strategies, resources to support succession planning. The responsibility for undertaking a succession planning program and preparing a succession plan is generally that of the chief administrative officer, administrator, and management staff under the guidance of council. The responsibility for implementing a succession plan, including staff development initiative, rests with council, the chief administrative officer, management, and the employees. It's important to note that a succession plan is not a static document, and a municipality may wish to evaluate and revise it regularly. At this point of the presentation, I will be passing it over to my colleague, Lisa Harvey.
Thank you, Sophia. Can you hear me?
Can hear you just fine, Lisa.
Yes.
Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. So ensuring accountability and transparency is one of council's roles under the Act, under the Municipal Act, Section 224, and is a priority in maintaining public trust. Accountability can be thought of in terms of using public resources responsibly. Transparency is proving it by providing open information to the public. For example, streets need to be plowed in the winter. Being accountable means making sure there's enough operators and equipment to get the job done in a reasonable time at a reasonable cost. Being transparent means showing the cost of plowing snow to the public. Section 2 focuses on the legislative accountability and transparency framework that consists of a mix of requirements and options that municipalities and members of council and local boards must follow. Next slide. Policies. Documenting municipal policies is an important action of an open and transparent council. Many municipalities have developed policy manuals to provide a basis for sound decision-making and to help ensure that policies are implemented and applied in a consistent way. The Municipal Act requires municipalities to have policies on a number of matters that are outlined on this slide. When creating a policy, it can be helpful to look at what other municipalities have done and what is included in their policies to gather information on best practices. Next slide, please. Codes of conduct usually set out expectations and standards for councillor conduct. These codes may help prevent ethical conflicts and help in their resolution, serve as a basis for council orientation and training, and serve as a reference throughout the operation of council's term. Municipalities are required to establish codes of conduct for members of council and certain local boards, and are required to include certain subject matters in these codes. The required subject matters are gifts, benefits, and hospitality, respectful conduct, including towards officers and employees of the municipality or local boards, confidential information, use of municipal or local board property and equipment. It is up to municipalities to decide how to develop their codes. This slide provides some matters that a municipality may consider when developing and reviewing their codes of conduct. For a complete list of considerations, you are encouraged to review the Ontario Municipal Councillor's Guide. Next slide. Providing access to an integrity commissioner. Since 2019, municipalities have been required to ensure that the public has access to an integrity commissioner. The integrity commissioner's role is to perform in an independent manner the functions assigned by council with respect to the following items listed on the slide. Applying the local codes of conduct for members of council and certain local boards. Applying local procedures, rules, and policies governing the ethical behavior of members. Applying certain Municipal Conflict of Interest Act rules to members. Requests for advice from members of council and certain local boards, respecting their obligations under the local code of conduct applicable to the members, local procedures, rules, and policies governing the ethical behavior of the members, and certain sections of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Providing educational information to the public, the municipality, and members of council and certain local boards about local codes of conduct for members and about the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act is a big part of what the Integrity Commissioner does. The Commissioner's functions also include conducting inquiries about whether a member of council or a local board has contravened the applicable code of conduct. There is flexibility in how a municipality provides for the responsibility of an Integrity Commissioner. A municipality could consider possibilities such as appointing its own Integrity Commissioner and assigning all mandatory responsibilities to that commissioner, appointing its own Integrity Commissioner and assigning some of the mandatory responsibilities to that commissioner, and making arrangements for the remaining mandatory responsibilities to be provided by a commissioner of another municipality. Sharing an Integrity Commissioner with another municipality, for example, across the upper tier. Making arrangements for all of the mandatory Integrity Commissioner responsibilities to be provided by a commissioner of another municipality is yet another option. A municipality could also consider assigning additional responsibilities to an Integrity Commissioner. When deciding on the arrangements for an Integrity Commissioner, a municipality may wish to consider a number of things, including, among others, the anticipated workload of the Integrity Commissioner in the municipality, as well as the workload in other municipalities if the commissioner is shared between them. A suitable budget for the anticipated workload of the Integrity Commissioner, how the Integrity Commissioner will remain independent from the municipality, where and how the public, council, staff will communicate with the Integrity Commissioner, especially if the municipality is making arrangements with an Integrity Commissioner of a different municipality. How long the Integrity Commissioner is expected to work for the municipality are just some things to consider before hiring an Integrity Commissioner. What will happen if issues arise with the work arrangements? The qualifications and skills for an Integrity Commissioner are also important. If the Integrity Commissioner reports that in their opinion, a member has contravened a code of conduct, the municipality may impose a penalty in the form of a reprimand or a suspension of pay for a period of up to 90 days. It is up to the municipality to decide how to proceed after the Integrity Commissioner's report has been submitted. Next slide, please. Accountability officers. To help support the integrity and accountability in public office, municipalities may pass bylaws to appoint certain accountability officers, such as a municipal ombudsman, auditor general, a lobbyist registrar, and closed meeting investigator. The municipal ombudsman investigates in an independent manner decisions and recommendations made and actions done or omitted in the course of administration of a municipality, local board, or certain municipal corporations. The municipal ombudsman is a separate office from the Ontario ombudsman, who also has a role with respect to municipalities. An auditor general may assist council in holding itself and municipal administrators accountable for the quality of stewardship over public funds and achieve value for money in municipal operations. The Auditor General must also perform their duties in an independent manner. The Auditor General's responsibilities do not include the responsibilities of the municipal auditor. A lobbyist registrar performs in an independent manner the functions assigned by the municipality with respect to the lobbyist registry, such as establishing a code of conduct for lobbyists and prohibiting former public office holders from lobbying for a specific time period. A closed meeting investigator investigates also in an independent manner complaints about closed meetings. Should a municipality not appoint an investigator, the Ontario Ombudsman is the closed meeting investigator for default for the municipality. Next slide, please. The next 4 slides discuss municipal conflict of interest matters. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act sets out the ethical rules for council and local board members. For example, a member may have to take steps if they are present at a council or a board meeting where their property will be discussed. These rules apply with some exceptions to council if they have a pecuniary or rather financial interest in a matter that is before council or local board at a meeting. Next slide. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act requires a member of council with a financial interest to disclose the interest and its general nature before the matter is considered at the meeting. Not take part in the discussion or voting on any question in respect of the matter. Not attempt to influence the voting before, during, or after the meeting, and immediately leave the meeting if the meeting is closed to the public. The Integrity Commissioner can provide council members with advice about conflict of interest matters. The member is responsible for determining whether they have a pecuniary interest. Next slide, please. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act generally prohibits members of council or of a local board from using their office to attempt to influence decisions or recommendations being considered by municipal or local board employees if the member has a financial interest in the matter. For example, a member with a pecuniary interest in a matter could not, in most instances, try to influence a decision or recommendation of a municipal employee who is considering the matter. There are other rules concerning members' statements and disclosures under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act and a registry for them. A member who discloses a financial interest at a meeting are required to file a written statement of their interest, either at the meeting or as soon as possible afterwards. This is in addition to the existing requirement for the clerk or secretary to record members' declarations of interest in the meeting minutes. Municipalities and local boards are required to establish and maintain a registry of statements and declarations of interest of members and make it available to the public. The registry helps increase transparency by providing a compilation of written statements and declarations in one place. There are a broad range of penalties for contravention of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which gives the courts flexibility in how they can respond to contraventions. Penalties for contraventions of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, for example, include reprimand, suspension of pay for a period of up to 90 days, restitution, and removal from office. The courts decide whether or not a contravention of the Act has taken place. Next slide, please. This is the last slide on municipal conflict of interest. The Act provides integrity commissioners with the responsibility to investigate a complaint from an elector or a person demonstratively acting in the public interest concerning an alleged contravention of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act rules that apply to members. After completing an investigation, the Integrity Commissioner could decide to apply to a judge for a determination as to whether the member has contravened this legislation. If an Integrity Commissioner decides not to apply to a judge, the person who made the complaint can still do so if certain conditions are met. See the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, Section 223.4, subsection 1 for more information. Next slide, please. Codes of conduct for municipal officials. Other statutes may require municipalities to adopt specific or general codes of conduct. For example, The Building Code Act, for short BCA, requires municipalities to establish and enforce a code of conduct for the chief building official and inspectors. The BCA states that the purpose of the code of conduct is to promote appropriate standards of behavior and enforcement actions, prevent practices which may constitute an abuse of power, and promote appropriate standards of honesty and integrity. Codes of conduct must include policies or guidelines to be used in responding to allegations of breach and must set out disciplinary actions that may be taken. Municipalities must ensure that the public is aware of this code of conduct. Next slide, please. The Ontario Ombudsman. The Ontario Ombudsman promotes fairness, accountability, and transparency in the public sector and may recommend improvements. Since 2016, the Ontario Ombudsman may investigate municipalities on complaint or on the Ombudsman's own initiative. Although the Ontario Ombudsman may investigate, they cannot compel municipalities to take action. It is up to the Ombudsman how to respond to complaints. For example, the Ontario Ombudsman's practice is to investigate complaints made to local integrity officers only after the local complaint processes are completed. The Ontario Ombudsman does not replace locally established complaint mechanisms or act as an integrity commissioner for the municipality. Local accountability officers and municipal codes of conduct are an important part of Ontario's local accountability framework. For more information about the Ontario Ombudsman, including its processes, please see the Ontario Ombudsman Act and the Ontario Ombudsman's website. Next slide, please. This is the last slide in this section. Privacy and confidentiality. Personal privacy and other confidentiality issues are an important practical and legal consideration for municipal councillors and staff. The Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, MFIPA, is the primary statute for privacy and confidentiality. Basically, it sets out the rules for collection, use, and disclosure of personal information. According to these rules, councillors and staff, in most circumstances, would protect personal privacy and only collect, use, and disclose personal information in accordance with these rules. For example, depending on circumstances, councillors and staff may or may not be authorized to obtain personal information in the course of their duties. This might mean that sometimes councillors could not obtain this kind of information from staff. Other statutes and laws, also including local bylaws, also regulate personal and other kinds of confidential information. Councillors who may have received personal or other confidential information in the course of their duties will have related responsibilities such as protecting and safeguarding this information. Councillors may wish to check with municipal staff about appropriate measures and municipalities' practices. This terminates the accountability and transparency section. Let's now turn our attention to meetings. Next slide, please. Meetings. Many of your municipalities' key affairs are handled at council meetings. It is important to understand how to hold meetings, set procedures for meetings, and be aware of other things to consider when making decisions about how you conduct council business. Next slide. Procedure bylaw. Every municipality, certain local boards must pass a procedure bylaw to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of their meetings. Generally, the powers of your municipality must be exercised by council by bylaw. Bylaws are passed at council meetings. Central parts of council decision-making, including deliberation and voting, take place there. This makes it important that council meetings be properly called and constituted. and that proper procedures be followed. The procedure bylaw sets out how your municipality's meetings are to be conducted. The contents are generally up to your municipality. Accordingly, your municipality has flexibility and may consider how to adapt its meeting procedures to local circumstances. The procedure bylaw may be seen as a transparency and accountability tool and a visible indication of your municipality's commitment to citizen engagement. Procedure bylaws often provide for opportunities for the public to be involved. You may wish to consider reviewing your municipality's procedure bylaw regularly, including how it might better facilitate decision-making. Your municipality's procedure bylaw must provide for public notice of meetings. In reviewing the bylaw, you may wish to consider how the municipality's notice of meetings procedures may align with your municipality's other notice policies. The posting of meeting notices and agendas in advance of meetings on your website. What is sufficient information to help the public in understanding the purpose of the meeting? Notice of meetings may be an important factor in strengthening municipal accountability and transparency and encouraging public participation in local government decision-making. Next slide. Definition of a meeting. In connection with procedure bylaws and the rules respecting council and certain local board meetings, the Municipal Act generally defines meetings as any regular, special, or other meeting of a council, of a local board, or of a committee of either of them where A, a quorum of members is present, B, members discuss or otherwise deal with any matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision-making of the council, local board, or committee. More information may be found in Section 238, subsection 1 of the Municipal Act. Next slide. Meeting considerations. When your council or board is making its decision about whether a gathering of its members is a meeting, it may wish to keep in mind, among other things, the following important considerations. Is the subject matter of the meeting something traditionally municipal or something municipalities make decisions about? How many members are present? Did the attendees take a position on or agree or disagree with an item of council business? Are municipal resources being used? Are municipal staff present? What is their role? Is the municipal decision-making process transparent? How are the members participating? In addition, it is possible that a gathering of council or board member may be a meeting for the purpose of the meeting rules in the Municipal Act, whether or not the gathering was called a meeting, or some other term, a workshop perhaps. Followed formal procedures, took place on municipal premises, or happened without or outside the municipality. Next slide, please. Meetings. Councils may consider it a best practice to exercise their municipal powers and conduct business in a clear and consistent fashion. As a councillor, you may find it helpful to become thoroughly familiar with proper procedures with respect to calling and conducting council meetings, enacting bylaws and other resolutions, and administering and enforcing bylaws. Quorum. A quorum is often understood to mean the minimum number of members needed to conduct business at a meeting. Generally, it is a majority of members. A procedure bylaw may provide that a member may participate electronically, and a member who is participating in a meeting electronically may be counted in determining quorum. Quorum may be affected by members' declaration of pecuniary interest. Members may be unable to vote at or participate in a meeting because of a declaration of financial interest. If council is unable to hold a meeting for a period of 60 days because of a failure to obtain quorum, the minister, by order, declare all member seats vacant and a by-election may be held. Next slide. Open and closed meetings. The Municipal Act includes provisions related to the transparency and accountability of local government, including the conduct of meetings and when they are open to the public. Transparent decision-making processes may be seen as part of the foundation of good governance of a municipality. A key transparency rule for municipalities is the requirement that most municipal meetings be open to the public. There are a limited number of exceptions. For example, meetings may be closed to the public for consideration, litigation, or personnel matters about an identifiable individual. For more information, see Section 239 of the Municipal Act. Next slide. When can a meeting be closed? A meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is, among others, related to security of municipal or local board property, personal matters about an identifiable individual, proposed or pending land acquisition or disposal, and labor relations or employee negotiations, and litigation or potential litigation. Advice subject to solicitor-client privilege. For more information for other matters that may be considered in closed session, you can refer to Section 239 of the Municipal Act. Next slide. When a meeting shall be closed. The Municipal Act provides that a meeting or part of a meeting shall be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is a request under MFIPA if the council, board, commission, or other body is the head of an institution for the purpose of that act, or the ongoing investigation respecting the municipality, a local board, or municipally controlled corporation by the Ontario Ombudsman, a municipal ombudsman, or meeting investigator. For information on this subject, please refer to Section 239 of the Municipal Act. Next slide. Closed meeting procedures. Before holding a meeting closed to the public, sometimes called an in-camera meeting, a municipality, local board, and committee of either must advise the public of the following: the fact of holding the closed meeting and the general nature of the matter to be discussed. In the case of closed educational and training meetings, there is an additional requirement that a resolution state the meeting is closed under subsection 239, subsection 3.1. Generally, voting must not take place at closed meetings. The limited circumstances where voting may take place at a closed meeting include to give instruction on the matter to staff and procedural matters. As an example, a municipal council might discuss with the clerk and consider if an adjournment would be procedural. Next slide. Electronic meetings. Procedure bylaws may be amended to enable electronic participation of local members at meetings in accordance with the bylaw. Provide that members may participate electronically in open and closed meetings, and provide that members who participate electronically may be counted towards quorum. In connection with potential electronic participation by local members, a municipality and local board has the flexibility to consider the following: whether to pass a bylaw respecting electronic participation at all, the extent and manner of electronic participation, for example, consider which technology best suits their local circumstances, and a municipality or local board may consider holding a special meeting to amend their procedure bylaw to allow for electronic participation. All meetings, including electronic meetings, must follow the general meeting rules in the legislation, including rules respecting providing notice of meetings to the public, maintaining meeting minutes, and holding meetings open to the public, subject to the exceptions. Next slide. Voting and proxy voting. Each member of council, as mentioned, has one vote on council. Council as a whole makes decisions for the municipality. Sometimes, due to weighted voting in upper tiers, some members have what seems to be more than one vote. Subject to certain conditions, municipalities have the flexibility to choose to allow proxy votes for council members who are absent from the meeting, for example, due to illness or a leave of absence. This authority applies to all municipalities in Ontario, whether upper, lower, or single tier. This power helps ensure continuing representation of constituents' interests when a member is unable to attend in person due to illness or a leave of absence. Municipalities wishing to allow proxy voting must amend their procedure bylaw to allow a member of council to appoint another member of the same council to act in their place when they are absent. Once a proxy has been appointed, the appointing member can revoke the proxy using the process established by the municipal clerk. Municipalities have the flexibility to determine the scope and extent of proxy appointments and may wish to consider the following: how proxies may be established and revoked, circumstances in which proxies may or may not be used, how a proxy holder may participate in a meeting, including voting, speaking, or asking questions on behalf of the appointing member. Council may also wish to consider addressing proxy voting in their code of conduct or other local policies to help ensure that votes are appropriately cast and that the local process is followed. Next slide, please. Proxy voting limitations. Limits to the proxy appointment process are set out in legislation. These include: a proxy holder cannot be appointed unless they are a member of the same council as the appointing member. For upper tiers, this means that the proxy holder has to be a member of the same upper tier council as the appointee, regardless of the lower tier membership. A member cannot be a proxy holder for more than one other member at the same time. An appointed proxy is not counted when determining if a quorum is present. A member appointing a proxy shall notify the municipal clerk of the appointment in accordance with the local process established by the clerk. When recording vote is taken, the clerk shall record the name and vote of every proxy holder and the name of the member of council for whom the proxy is acting. It is important to note that council member absent rules still apply. This would mean that a member's seat would become vacant in accordance with Section 259, subsection 1C of the Municipal Act if they are absent from council meetings for 3 consecutive months without being authorized to do so by council resolution. Next slide. Proxy voting accountability and transparency. Members appointing proxies or acting as a proxy holder are required to follow existing accountability and transparency requirements. For example, a member may not appoint a proxy or serve as a proxy holder on a matter in which they have a pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Municipalities may also want to consider transparency measures, such as communicating who has appointed a proxy and who is serving as a proxy to the public, publishing meeting agendas in advance of the meeting so that proxies can be appointed if needed and potential conflict of interest can be identified, and allowing members of council to participate electronically when not able to attend in person rather than appointing a proxy. You can find more information about existing accountability and transparency requirements, including the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, Codes of Conduct, and the role of the Integrity Commissioner in the Municipal Councillor's Guide, which can be viewed on the Ministry's website. Next slide. Minutes, record of meeting. A municipality, local board, or committee of either must record without note or comment all the decisions, resolutions, and other proceedings at a meeting, regardless of whether the meeting is open or closed to the public. The record must be made by the clerk in the case of a meeting of council, or the appropriate officer in the case of a meeting of a local board or committee. The term minutes is often used to describe this record. Next slide. This is the last slide in this section. Closed meeting investigation. A municipality may appoint a closed meeting investigator who may, on complaint by a member of the public, investigate in an independent manner whether a meeting or part of the municipal or local board meeting has been closed improperly. Alternatively, if your municipality has not appointed a meeting investigator, the Ontario Ombudsman may, on complaint by a member of the public, conduct a closed meeting investigation. If after investigation, an investigator is of the opinion that the meeting or part of it was not closed in accordance with the meeting rules in the Act or a procedure bylaw, the investigator shall report their opinion and their reasons to the municipality or the local board, as the case may be, and may make recommendations as he or she sees fit. A municipality or local board must make this report public and must pass a resolution stating how it intends to address this report. This terminates the meeting section. I will now ask my coworker Keely to present the next section.
So we're moving on to the section on municipal government now. Next slide, please. So municipality is defined in the Municipal Act as a geographic area whose inhabitants are incorporated. The Act further provides that municipalities are created by the province of Ontario to be responsible and accountable governments with respect to matters within their jurisdiction. And each municipality is given powers and duties under the Act and many other acts for the purposes of providing good government with respect to said matters. Next slide, please. The Municipal Act is a framework document for municipal government and provides a foundation for municipal powers, structures, and governance. The authority for municipal activities can also be found in many other provincial statutes, including the Planning Act, the DSAB Act, the Police Services Act, and the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. It's important to note that some municipal services are mandatory, meaning that they must be provided, while others are optional, and it's up to council to decide whether or not to provide them. Next slide, please. So some municipalities act as service managers, or as we sometimes refer to them as the ministry, SM. Generally, these are municipalities that are designated as service delivery agents for Ontario Works or social assistance, childcare, and social housing. Municipalities that are service managers may also have special responsibilities for land ambulance and other matters. Consolidation of services helps the service managers to plan and administer these services regionally, even in areas that are not served by two-tier systems like Kawartha Lakes. There are 37 municipal service managers and 10 district social services administration boards, or DSABs, as they're sometimes called. They deliver these services throughout Ontario. So in Southern Ontario, service managers are the upper, or in this case, single-tier municipalities. And in Northern Ontario, other than in the city of Greater Sudbury, service managers are district social service administration boards. It's important for all councillors to know and understand the role and the interests of the service manager. And as a councillor, you may wish to keep a list identifying the service manager and other organizations providing services to the public in your municipality. Next slide, please. The municipal committees, local boards, and other special purpose bodies provide an opportunity for council to take advantage of areas of expertise and provide opportunities for volunteers to bring their views and ideas to council. In terms of committees, some municipalities have a governance structure that includes standing committees or advisory committees of council. These committees can focus on a particular area of ongoing municipal matters, such as finance or budgeting, and others may be set up for a period or for a set period to deliberate on short-term matters or items of particular interest for a short period of time. Committees can consist of councillors only, or they can be made up of a mix of councillors and appointees from the public. Generally, committees whose membership is made up of at least 50% of those who serve as members on a municipal council or local board must conduct their meetings in accordance with open meeting provisions in the legislation, including proper record keeping done by the appropriate officer. These committees would also be included in the municipality's procedure bylaw, and such bylaws describe, among other things, how committees are called, where they'll take place, how public notice of the meeting will be given, and other rules on how the meeting will be run. Municipalities can consider requiring other municipal committees to adhere to procedural rules as well. And generally, municipal freedom of information legislation would apply to records of municipal committees in the way that it applies to most municipal records. In terms of local boards, a local board, like a municipality, carries a special legal status in the sense that particular rules, rights, and responsibilities may apply. So different kinds of local boards can have different rules apply to them. Each case needs to be looked at individually. Local boards are often subject to the same or similar rules as municipal councils. For example, some local boards are required to adopt and maintain policies with respect to the sale and disposition of land, hiring employees, and procurement of goods and services. Local boards can be known by various names: municipal service boards, school boards, police services boards, boards of health, hospital boards, transit commissions, and the like. Many local boards are referred to in legislation administered by different provincial ministries. For example, the Planning Act provides for the establishment of planning boards and land division committees, and the Education Act sets up the duties and responsibilities of school boards. Local boards are often subject to the same or similar rules as municipal council. For example, as I said, they're required to maintain specific policies. But as a member of council, you may also find yourself to be a member of a local body with the associated legal or practical responsibilities for that position. In that case, you may wish to familiarize yourself with those specific responsibilities. And finally, municipal service boards. They are local bodies that may be established by one municipality or by two or more municipalities. Generally, former public utility commissions, parking authorities, and boards of park management are municipal service boards. The municipality or municipalities, if that's the case, can decide on things like the name, the composition, and the budget process of these municipal service boards, as well as the manner of selecting members of the board, their term of office, and the number of votes, as well as the relationship of that service board to the municipality, including the service board's financial relationship. Municipalities may wish to consider whether it would be useful to delegate some of their powers to a municipal service board, but again, that's up to the discretion of a specific municipality. Next slide, please. So the Act endorses the principle of ongoing consultation between the province and municipalities on matters of mutual interest. The Act requires the province to consult with municipalities in accordance with the Memorandum of Understanding between the province and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, or AMO. AMO is a nonprofit organization that represents almost all municipalities in the province, and AMO provides a variety of services for its members, and there are several specialized municipal associations that are part of AMO, including ROMA, FNAM, and NOMA. There are also many other municipal organizations, including the professional municipal organizations with subject matter specialties, such as AMCTO, which is for clerks, and MSOA, which is for financial officers or treasurers, and ONTRA. There's also municipal groups whose membership includes a mix of political and professional staff, such as OGRA, or the Good Roads Conference, OLA, and ONPHA. The political associations, such as LUMCO and MARCO, as well as regional associations that work closely with the ministry that I'm sure you're familiar with, like the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus and the Eastern Ontario Mayor's Caucus. Next slide, please. So now we're going to move on to Section 7, which gives an overview of some of the legal considerations on exercising powers given to municipalities and limitations placed on a municipality's powers. Next slide, please. So considerations for councillors and councils when proposing bylaws are that bylaws passed by council can have a significant impact on the municipality, including the municipality's residents and communities. Municipalities generally act through a special kind of law called a bylaw, and these policies established by council through bylaws can help shape the long-term health and well-being of the community. Councillors may wish to be aware of some of the key considerations and limits on municipal powers in this case. Next slide, please. As a councillor, it's important to be familiar with some general legal considerations that may apply to the municipality as a whole, as well as to councillors individually. So a fundamental consideration is the constitutional position of municipalities. So the Constitution Act, formerly the British North America Act, sets out a general principle that provinces have the exclusive right to pass laws respecting municipal institutions. And a number of general considerations follow from this, including that municipalities may only do what they've been authorized to do by the province, and the province may give a municipality only those powers that it may exercise itself within the Constitution's division of federal and provincial powers. There is another constitutional implication for municipalities. So Part 1 of the Constitution Act contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The charter is relevant for both federal and provincial governments, as well as municipalities, in passing laws and taking other actions. It's also important to consider key federal and provincial legislation that may affect municipalities. For example, the Ontario Human Rights Code provides generally, among other things, that every person has the right to equal treatment without discrimination due to race, color, gender identity, sex, sexual orientation, disability, age, and other grounds. Other examples include the Planning Act and the Municipal Act. Next slide, please. So as a councillor, it's really important to consider the legal authority for your actions. The law is complex, and councillors may wish to consult with the municipal solicitor whenever any legal issue is at question. At the same time, it may be useful to have some familiarity with the sources of municipal law and try to keep up to date with the ever-changing body of law affecting municipal activity. So statute law is an important source of law that may be passed by the provincial and federal governments. A few statutes of special importance to municipalities are the Municipal Act, as previously mentioned. It's one of the most significant provincial statutes concerning Ontario municipalities and gives municipalities the flexibility to deal with local circumstances and to react quickly to local economic, environmental, or social changes. An up-to-date consolidated version of the Municipal Act is maintained on the provincial e-laws website if ever you need to access it. Other general acts include other statutes that apply to municipalities, such as the Planning Act, the Line Fences Act, the Building Code Act, the Police Services Act, the Fire Prevention and Protection Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, Accessibilities for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, the Emergency Management and Civil Protections Act, among others. There's also acts that are specific to individual municipalities. Whether or not a municipality was restructured, it may have its own special act, including the City of Toronto Act, the Town of Haldimand Act, the City of Hamilton Act, the Town of Norfolk Act, City of Ottawa Act, and the City of Greater Sudbury Act. There's also a number of private acts that have been passed for specific municipalities. Individual municipalities may request these acts in order to get specific powers not found in the general acts or other pieces of legislation. These acts may give municipalities flexibility in the way that they deal with certain issues that are of concern specifically to that municipality. And regulations are laws made under the authority in statutes such as the Municipal Act or the Municipal Elections Act. And thank you for that. The City of Kawartha Lakes Act as well. But the power to make regulations is usually given to the Lieutenant Governor in Council or a Minister of the Crown. And regulations provide further directions as to how certain provisions of acts are to be applied. So think of it as kind of a simplified directions on how to implement certain acts. For example, a regulation made under Section 216 of the Municipal Act gives more detail on making changes to and dissolving local boards, while a regulation made under the Municipal Elections Act authorizes the use of certain forms during the election period. Most Ontario regulations can also be found on the provincial e-laws website. There are also some federal statutes like the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation Act, which may affect your municipality's activities. There's also administrative law. I almost lost my connection there. Sorry about that. There's also administrative law, which in addition to statute law, councillors may wish to be aware of. Administrative law principles may be established by statute and the decisions of courts, boards, and tribunals and apply to the interpretation and exercise of powers under legislation. There's boards and tribunals, which generally are given authority by statute and make decisions on certain matters. For example, the OLT holds hearings on such matters as long-term borrowing, land use planning, and boundary adjustments involving territory without municipal organization. Similar bodies that your municipality may deal with include the Ontario Labour Relations Board, WSIB, the Assessment Review Board, the Conservation Review Board, and the Landlord and Tenant Board. The decisions that result from these boards and tribunals form administrative case law that may affect your municipal decision-making and operations. Finally, there's case law, which in addition to other sources of law, statutes are interpreted by various court decisions over the years, and this case law is also important to municipalities and councillors. Next slide, please. So the Act and other provincial legislation give all municipalities a variety of powers subject to duties and limits. These powers and limits fall into various general categories, including natural person powers, broad powers, and specific powers. The spheres of jurisdiction address the division of powers in a two-tiered system of local government. The municipal powers set out in many statutes and regulations may be complex. Members of council are encouraged to seek the advice of staff or the municipality's solicitor on specific legal questions and on how proposed decisions and bylaws may be impacted. The next few slides will provide further details on these categories of municipal powers under the Act. Next slide, please. So the Act gives municipal governments natural person powers with certain limits. Natural person powers may give municipalities similar flexibility to that of individuals and corporations in managing their organizational and administrative affairs without the need for more specific legislative authority. These powers may enable your municipality to hire staff, enter into agreements, and acquire land and goods. Next slide, please. The Act provides municipalities with powers and duties for the purposes of providing good government with respect to matters within their jurisdiction. So municipalities generally have broad powers to pass bylaws respecting the following matters within certain limits: good governance structure of the municipality and its local boards, accountability and transparency of the municipality and its operations and of its local boards and their operations, financial management of the municipality and its local boards, public assets of the municipality acquired for the purpose of exercising its authority under the Municipal Act or any other act, economic, social, and environmental well-being of the municipality, health and safety and well-being of persons in the municipality, services and things that the municipality is authorized to provide, the protection of persons and property, including consumer protection, animals, structures, including fences and signs, as well as business licensing. The spheres of jurisdiction provisions in the Municipal Act set out rules assigning certain powers to upper tier and lower tier municipalities. Some powers are exclusive to upper tier and lower tier municipalities, and some aren't. So if you do have a question, you may wish to speak with the municipal clerk or the municipal solicitor to determine. I see a hand up. Is it about this section here? Something that I can answer?
No, I'm just preparing. Thank you.
Oh, okay, perfect. Next slide, please. So municipalities in two-tier systems, which not the case here, but they may wish to be aware of the spheres of jurisdiction rules, which address the division of powers between upper and lower tier municipalities. So the spheres of jurisdiction include rules about whether the upper or lower tier or both may pass bylaws within all or part of each sphere, such as economic development, services, or public utilities. Next slide, please. So powers to license are set out in section 151 of the Municipal Act, and other sections of the Municipal Act may apply, including in the broad powers sections in sections 10 and 12 of the Municipal Act. Municipalities have express authority to license certain businesses such as taxis, tow trucks, adult entertainment establishments, and trailer parks. A municipality may be able to impose conditions on a license. Generally, municipalities don't have the power to require a business license from a manufacturing or industrial business, except to the extent that they're selling products or raw material by retail, the sale of goods by wholesale, and the generation, exploitation, extraction, harvesting, processing, renewal, or transportation of natural resources. Additionally, a municipality may be able to suspend a license depending on the facts and relevant legal considerations. Next slide, please. So specific powers may be seen as any powers given to municipalities under various acts other than the broad powers. For example, the Building Code Act contains enabling powers and rules for municipalities. As previously mentioned, the Municipal Act and other provincial legislation put in place duties on your municipality and include limitations on this power. These rules may reflect provincial government policy. For example, in general, municipal bylaws cannot conflict with the federal or provincial statutes or regulations. The broad powers and the spheres of jurisdiction are subject to procedural requirements, rules, and other limitations existing in the legislation. Except where expressly authorized, the municipality can only exercise its powers within its own municipal boundaries, and the province may, by regulation, limit some specific powers of a municipality. At this time, I'll pass it back over to Sophia to wrap up the presentation.
Thank you, Keely. All right, so we're in the last section of our presentation, which is exercising municipal powers. So best practice for municipal councils is to exercise their powers and conduct business in a clear and consistent fashion. The Act provides municipalities with broad authority to delegate powers and duties subject to certain restrictions. Your council has the authority to design its own governance structure and has the flexibility to delegate powers and responsibilities to committees, boards, and staff subject to certain limits. Delegation of minor matters may allow your council to streamline its decision-making and focus on the larger matters, making council's agendas more manageable. Delegation builds on a municipality's authority to create local bodies to help with local decision-making. The Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may make regulations restricting or imposing conditions on the delegation of those powers. In addition to administrative matters or matters that a natural person could delegate, for example, buying and selling real and personal property, hiring staff, and entering into agreements, Council can delegate legislative powers under the Act and other listed acts, as well as quasi-judicial powers under the same acts, to certain persons or bodies subject to certain restrictions. Legislative and quasi-judicial matters can only be delegated to one or more members of council or a council committee or to a body having at least 2 members. At least 50% of members of such a body must be council members and or council appointees. Legislative and quasi-judicial matters can also be delegated to officers, employees, or agents of the municipality, but they can only be delegated minor legislative powers such as temporarily closing a highway or imposing conditions on a license. Powers that cannot be delegated include appointing or removing statutory officers required under the Act, imposing taxes, incorporating corporations, adopting or amending official plans, passing zoning bylaws, passing certain bylaws related to small business counseling and municipal capital facilities, adopting community improvement plans that authorize bonusing, approving or amending municipal budgets, and other powers as prescribed. Council can revoke a delegation unless the original delegation bylaw specifically limits the power of council to revoke it. A council cannot stop future councils from revoking a delegation. Council can, within certain limits, designate a person or a body, whether composed of themselves or another body, to conduct a review or appeal of the decisions of another person or body who has been delegated a power of duty. Bylaws and resolutions. So firstly, we have bylaws. The powers of your municipality are generally exercised by either a bylaw or a resolution. Generally, bylaws must be signed by the head of council or presiding officer of the meeting at which the bylaw was passed and by the clerk and under the seal of corporation. Additional requirements may apply before a bylaw can be passed, such as holding a public meeting, giving public notice, or obtaining the approval of a provincial ministry or board. Resolutions are generally submitted in the form of a motion and adopted by a majority vote. The formalities for adopting a resolution may not be as strict as those for passing a bylaw. Council's views on a specific issue are recorded as statements in a resolution reflecting the opinion of council. Such resolutions often express the municipality's position on various concerns about existing government policy, regulations, or funding. They may also call for changes in the provincial-municipal relationship. After adoption, they are often sent to the appropriate government agency, association, or member of provincial parliament. The powers of your council are generally exercised by bylaw for matters or for actions that will affect the public. If in doubt, councils may consider consulting their lawyer. Procedural requirements. Proper procedures are important when passing or amending bylaws. For example, before passing a bylaw, generally, an open council meeting would be in session and there would be a quorum of members in attendance. Some councils may pass bylaws on the day that they are first presented, while for others, a longer time may be needed for practical or legal reasons. As examples, your municipality's procedure bylaw may require advance vote notice of the introduction of most bylaws, and statutory rules require 2 readings of certain bylaws. Every municipality and certain local boards must pass a procedure bylaw to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of their meetings. The content for the procedure bylaw is generally up to the council or the local board. Some legal considerations. Municipalities are responsible and accountable governments, and many important legal considerations may apply to their actions and decisions. Here is a brief description of a few of them. As with any legal matter, people with a specific legal question may wish to contact their own legal advisor. Hearings. For some of actions, for example, revoking a business license, council may decide if it needs to hold a hearing for legal or other reasons. These reasons might include fair treatment of the people involved. The Statutory Powers Act sets out procedural rules that may apply to such hearings. These rules include that most proceedings would be held in public, and that parties involved would be given reasonable notice. Municipalities may wish to consider use of their delegation powers in relation to hearings. See among other provisions in Section 231.1 to 23.5 of the Municipal Act. Some councils have delegated their authority to hold hearings. Good faith, reasonableness, and the courts. Municipal decisions must not be based on fraud, oppression, or improper motive. Courts may decide to quash a bylaw based on bad faith. The courts decide about good faith and other legal issues on a case-by-case basis. For example, while generally a bylaw passed by council in good faith cannot be quashed or reviewed by the courts because of claims of unreasonableness of the bylaw, the courts have held that unreasonableness might be evidence of bad faith. Enforcement of bylaws. Navigating the legal complexities of passing a bylaw is only the first step. In practice, a bylaw will have little value unless your municipality has the determination and the means to enforce it. Before a bylaw is passed, careful consideration of the bylaw, including its intended purpose and outcome, may be helpful. Implications of passing the bylaw may include such issues as: how will the bylaw affect the community? Will it impose restrictions or hardships on particular areas or groups of people? Will public reaction be favorable? If not, how will council respond? What will it cost to administer that bylaw? Can existing staff be expected to handle the additional responsibilities, or will more staff be required? And is the municipality prepared to enforce the bylaw and enforce it consistently? General responsibility for enforcement. Municipal enforcement personnel. Council may decide to hire one or more bylaw enforcement officers. Council may wish to consider if these people will act only on complaints or will actively look for infractions. In either case, your municipality will benefit from employing bylaw enforcement officers that have diplomacy, tact, and negotiating skills, because many complaints can be resolved without going to court. Smaller municipalities without a dedicated municipal bylaw enforcement officer can pursue other avenues of enforcement, such as pursuing an independent service provider. An example would be the Municipal Enforcement Unit, a third-party provider of bylaw enforcement services to a variety of small municipalities in southwestern Ontario. Action by police. Council sometimes calls on the police Council sometimes calls on to the local police force or the Ontario Provincial Police, where it provides local police services to enforce bylaws. You should keep in mind that police have extensive responsibilities, and your council may wish to consider other means of enforcement, or how your enforcement regime might interact with police services. Action by the public. If a person believes that there's been a contravention of a bylaw and is dissatisfied with the level of enforcement provided by the municipality, they may wish to consider taking steps themselves to bring the alleged offender before the courts through a private prosecution. To do so, the person would need to appear before a justice of the peace or provincial judge. Offenses and penalties. The Act provides that a municipality may establish a system of fines for offenses under a bylaw of the municipality. See Section 429. This includes designating an offense as a continuing offense and establishing a minimum and maximum fine for the offense for each day or part day that a contravention continues, establishing escalating fines for repeat convictions of the same offense, and establishing special fines designed to reduce or eliminate any economic advantages resulting from a contravention. However, a municipality cannot establish fines for a bylaw offense for which specific fines are set out in another act. The municipality can also establish a procedure for voluntary payment of penalties out of court for contraventions of bylaws related to the parking, standing or stopping of vehicles, or related to animals being at large or trespassing. Administrative penalties. Administrative penalties are a civil mechanism for promoting compliance with municipal bylaws and are imposed through administrative processes. A municipality may establish a system of administrative penalties to help the municipality in promoting compliance with its bylaws. The municipality may require a person, subject to such conditions as the municipality considers appropriate, to pay an administrative penalty if the municipality is satisfied that the person has failed to comply with the bylaw of the municipality passed under the Act. It is up to the municipality to decide the bylaws for which to impose administrative penalties and to decide the amount of an administrative penalty that a person would be required to pay. However, the amount of an administrative penalty cannot be punitive in nature and cannot exceed the amount reasonably required to promote compliance with a bylaw. If a municipality requires a person to pay an administrative penalty for a bylaw contravention, the person cannot be charged with an offense for the same contravention. Any administrative penalty imposed on a person constitutes a debt of that person for the municipality. An unpaid administrative penalty can be added to the tax roll for any property in the local municipality for which all of the owners are responsible for paying an administrative penalty and can be collected in the same manner as taxes. Other bylaw enforcement powers. The Act under Section 435 and Section 447.2 provides for other powers related to bylaw enforcement. All of those powers are subject to restrictions and conditions as set on the Act. When contemplating one of these powers, municipal council could consider checking the details of the legislation and consult with municipal staff and or their municipal solicitor. In addition to actions your council can take against local residents, there are actions citizens can take against your municipality. The Ontario Ombudsman plays a role in investigating municipalities related to certain complaints, one of which being by law enforcement. Individuals may contact the Ontario Ombudsman to have their issue investigated if they have an issue they are not able to resolve within the municipality. Under the Act Section 273, any person may apply to the Superior Court of Justice to quash a bylaw in whole or in part for illegality. As a corporation, your municipality may be sued for failure to carry out or negligence in the conduct of its legal duties. For example, damage to vehicles caused by poorly maintained roads or an injury suffered in a fall on an icy sidewalk could result in a civil suit. You and the rest of council could ask your staff whether your municipality has adequate insurance to cover this type of civil action. The legislature and courts have come up with certain restrictions to protect municipalities from litigation. Where specifically allowed by statute, an individual may appeal municipal decisions to courts and to certain quasi-judicial bodies such as the Ontario Land Tribunal and the Assessment Review Board. Several examples can be found in land use planning with appeals of decisions made by committees of adjustment, land division committees, and councils. Judicial review. This form of court for a legal remedy proceeding is limited to situations where it is alleged that the municipality proposes to act or has acted without power or beyond its powers or has refused to exercise a mandatory power. In these circumstances, an individual may apply to the courts. It has become common practice for municipalities to adopt risk management strategies to address public liability. This involves identifying potential hazards and taking the appropriate measures to reduce or eliminate them in your community. Well, this concludes our presentation. I just want to thank everyone once again for the invitation to be here today with my colleagues. I'm not sure if we do have time for questions or not. However, I will leave that up to the organizer of the event to see if we have any time for questions.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I'll see if there are any, we'll try to be expedient and because we have a big agenda. Councillor Warren, you have a question?
I do, a couple actually. What kind of conflict of interest infractions would lead to the removal of a councillor? That was kind of a broad statement, I thought.
I think the Integrity Commissioner would be best to answer that one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's fine. Meetings like social gatherings for council, they're allowed, right? If it's not a meeting, but they're getting together for dinner or whatever.
Very scary here. Like, it's worth a conversation for sure. If you're not sure, look to see if you have quorum. If there's quorum, now look to see what topics you might discuss. If you're not sure if it consists of a meeting, or not only the fact that it is a meeting or not, but also what it is perceived to be. So that's really important. So that would be a conversation to have with your meeting investigator, to say, this is what we're planning on doing. We're worried that it might be perceived as a meeting, or what do you think? And that's worth a conversation for each and every time you are getting together and having a quorum, wherever you are, Tim Hortons or wherever.
Thank you. And just quickly, one quick last question. So can strategic plans be amended? Because a lot of strategic plans are made by the previous council moving forward many years. So that's the question.
I would speak to your clerk or your CAO on that. You are encouraged to review your strategic plans, especially a new council. That's, I think, probably on your to-do list, if I'm not correct.
I just wondered if they could be amended, that's all.
by reviewing it, and your CAO or your clerk can give
Okay,
you
thank you.
advice on how that is reviewed.
Thank you.
Sophia and Keely, anything else to add?
Nothing to add on my end.
Okay.
Nothing on my end either. Thank you, Lisa.
Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you to Lisa, I believe. Please, it was in your part of the presentation. It was brought up about quorum. I was just wondering, I won't belabor on the quorum, but what is the definition of quorum? Like, what percentage is it? I don't need to know where council meets or location. I'm not asking that. Just wondering, what is the definition? Like, what percentage is deemed a quorum? Was it 30, 40, 50%? If you had a number, just curious. And I had one more question.
Okay. Thank you for your question. The legislation doesn't give us a percentage. The legislation, I'd have to look at exactly what it says, but it says a majority. So, it doesn't say 50 plus 1 or something like that. Like, it just says a majority of. So I think I would look at your procedure bylaws to see exactly what your procedure bylaw states. With our 9-member council quorum is 5. That's what the clerk probably wrote that. So it's usually very clear in your procedure bylaw, and it is for your city. It is 5 of your 9.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is open and closed meetings. We as a council have open and closed meetings. School boards have open and closed meetings, but some other committees of council or organizations that councillors are appointed to don't have open meetings. I'll give an example. A local hospital board I was on for 3 years, and it's all closed. Even though you're dealing with taxpayer money, it's 100% closed. There's no open meetings. Are they governed under a different act, or is it just? It seems like a hodgepodge of regulations and rules for everybody, but just wondering why some organizations have completely closed meetings and others don't.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna have to get help with that one. Yeah. I'm gonna have to get help with that one. Go ahead.
I can jump in just for a second. So there are specific boards that are local boards, but they are the way that they operate is determined by another act. So, for example, Police Services Board, that would be governed by the Police Services Act, and there may be specific rules and regulations on how those meetings can operate. Also, I know that as an example, even though a meeting say isn't open to the public like a council meeting would, where people can come into chambers and attend the meeting, in that sense, the documentation that comes out of that meeting may be made public, and in that case, it's not necessarily a closed meeting in terms of the Municipal Act. It's just it isn't open for the public to directly attend, but it can be held accountable through documentation like the agendas, the minutes, if those are made public. If you have a question about specifically the hospital board, I believe that would be under the Health Services Act, though the clerk could probably best speak to your local jurisdiction and how your local boards are organized, as they're quite different throughout the province.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the information, and appreciate your time this afternoon. Have a great day, great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
We'll take 5 minutes. Let's receive this first. I have a motion to receive. Councillor Joyce, Councillor Warren, all in favor? And that's passed. 5 minutes. we'll now welcome Mr. Charles Harnick, who is our Integrity Commissioner, and he is going to give us a presentation regarding the role of the Integrity Commissioner for the City of Kawartha Lakes. Welcome, Mr. Harnick, and please proceed as soon as you are ready.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to be with you today. What I'm going to try and do is go through a series of slides that are really a bit of an annotated version of the of your code of conduct. I'm not going to deal with each and every slide because I think some of them are pretty self-explanatory. But I'm going to try and deal with the areas that I think are of most concern to elected members. Over the course of the presentation, feel free to jump in and ask questions, and we can, I think sometimes the best way is to go through this is with a bit of a dialogue. So feel free to interrupt me as we go. I'm going to start on, the first few slides are quite self-explanatory, and I'd like to start at slide number 4, if we could go to that. And this deals just at a high level with the role of the Integrity Commissioner, which was expanded significantly in March of 2019, giving the Integrity Commissioner jurisdiction to investigate contraventions of the code and to investigate breaches of Section 5, 5.1, and 5.2 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Next slide. So what the Integrity Commissioner does is review and report on complaints or requests for an inquiry. I provide advice to council and council members, and I'll have more to say about that as we go. And I provide educational services as I'm doing today. And in anticipation of this, and knowing that a number of folks are newly elected, have members had a chance to read the code of conduct? Is that
Yes?
I mean, I see Councillor Warren nodding her head, which is great, because I think it's really important and almost trite to say it's something that you should be keeping on your desk and taking a look at periodically. But I'm glad that people have had a chance to look at it in advance of this. I do, on slide 7, provide you with the link to access the code itself. Slide number 8 deals with general principles. Members shall serve and be seen to serve their constituents in a conscientious and diligent manner, avoiding the improper use of the influence of their office and conflicts of interest, both real and apparent. And you're going to see the issue of conflicts of interest surface in a number of places as we go through this. Members shall perform their duties in office in a manner that promotes public confidence and will bear close public scrutiny. Again, the same kind of thing dealing with conflicts of interest underlying these words. And the overriding objective is to enhance public confidence in government and the political process. Slide number 9 begins a section dealing with the scope of the code of conduct, setting out the city's expectations for its members and establishing rules for appropriate conduct. And it includes several key statements of principle that underline the code, such as the decision-making process of council is open, accessible, and equitable, and respects the city's governance structure. Members shall serve and be seen to serve their constituents in a conscientious and diligent manner. Members are expected to perform their duties and arrange their private affairs in a manner that promotes public confidence and which will bear close public scrutiny. Again, this underlying theme of that I believe leads to considerations at all times of conflict of interest issues. The public office is not to be used for personal financial benefit of any member. The conduct of each member should demonstrate fairness, respect for differences, and a duty to work with other members together for the common good. Slide number 11 deals with the purpose of the code, which is to set out clear expectations of the behavior of members of council in accordance with the principles of the code, to provide provide information to the public as to the behavior they can expect from members, and to provide guidance to members in the conduct of their duties as elected officials, and to provide a mechanism for responding to alleged breaches of the code. And slide number 12 deals with the definitions that occur throughout the code of conduct. Moving on to slide 13, and this section deals with actual conduct of members. Members shall act with good faith and care, conduct themselves with integrity, courtesy, and respectability at all meetings of council or any committee in accordance with the city's bylaws, rules, and policies, seek to advance the public interest with honesty, serve constituents in a conscientious and diligent manner, respect the individual rights, values, beliefs, and personality traits of any other person, refrain from making statements the member knows or ought reasonably to know to be false or with intent to mislead council or the public, accurately communicate the decisions of council, even if they disagree with council's ultimate determination and rulings. Refrain from making disparaging comments about another member or unfounded accusations about the motives of another member. And, throughout, I'm going to try it from here in to give you some examples or things that I have seen. And one of the areas where we're talking about conducting themselves with integrity, courtesy, respectability, respecting individual rights, values, beliefs, and personality traits of any other person. People come to council, as you're no doubt aware, to make depositions, and sometimes you're going to hear things that you don't agree with. And unless those things are defamatory or just over the line generally, deponents are entitled to their 5 minutes. I had a case in another municipality where a particular member didn't like what was being said and demanded that the person leave. And they turned off her microphone and out she went. And it was simply a matter of not respecting a person's individual rights, values, and beliefs. So while you may not agree, you must allow those folks to have their 5 minutes. And oftentimes I see complaints that people came to council, they made their deposition and no one really paid attention. Side conversations were going on. And those are kind of the areas that you want to pay particular attention to and avoid complaints. Moving on to slide 14, the code applies to every member of council, and including the mayor and local boards. And members shall not threaten or undertake any act of reprisal against a complainant or any other person for providing relevant information to the Integrity Commissioner. Members shall not obstruct the Integrity Commissioner or any other municipal official involved in applying or furthering the objectives or requirements of the code. And members shall not use the influence of their office for any purpose other than the lawful exercise of their official duties for municipal purposes. Just moving on to slide 15, which deals with transparency and openness. Members shall conduct business and their duties in an open and transparent manner so that the public can understand the process and rationale which has been used to reach decisions, ensure the public has input, ensure compliance with the Municipal Act, Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and other applicable legislation regarding open meetings, accountability, and transparency. And up to now, really the first 6 sections are really very general, very broad, in terms of the topics they deal with. And I think it leads me to kind of provide you with this, and that is that constituents sometimes, sorry.
We can still see and hear you.
Sorry, can you see me again?
We always could see you and hear you.
Oh, all right. I had a little thing flash up on my screen and everyone disappeared. So, but one of the things in terms of people who rely on these broad and general rules, they tend to use those rules and bring complaints because constituents will sometimes not always agree with positions taken by elected members. And I think one of the things that I think is very important is to make sure that you're prepared for that. And, that oftentimes, somebody will say that you weren't diligent in carrying out your responsibilities because they didn't like the decision that you made, and they will bring a complaint. And I think that, these bringing complaints under these broad general categories that you see in the first 6 sections are something you have to be aware of and be prepared for. So just a bit of advice around that. And just moving on to slide 16, which deals with business organization relations. Members must demonstrate transparency with regard to business relations and/or organizations conducting business with the city. No member shall act as a paid agent before council except as provided for in the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Actions of members shall be above suspicion and shall not give rise to any conflict of interest. Dealings with businesses and other interests must be able to bear the closest possible scrutiny and avoid risk of damage to public confidence in local government, council and council members' impartial and objective role. Members shall recognize the need for their decision-making to be viewed as impartial and transparent by either refraining from meetings with developers, businesses or other organizations who have applications before the municipality and or who wish to conduct business with the city, or disclosing to council and members of the public such information at the first opportunity. And you know, I just want to cross-reference this section with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and I'm going to have more to say about that. But you know, by way of example, and it came before this council in its previous incarnation. You know, you can't be on council dealing with a matter where somebody brings an application forward for a restaurant, and you have a restaurant in roughly the same location. You're on council, and now you're making a decision about somebody else's zoning. And I'm going to get into pecuniary interests shortly, but you know, those are the kinds of situations where you've got to be very alive to potential conflicts and be prepared to declare those conflicts. And I know that at the beginning of every meeting, there are declarations of conflicts of interest, and it's very important to be alive to that. The other issue that I want to bring to your attention is that as leaders in your community, you are often involved in other organizations or have been in the past before you were on council. And one of the things I see recurring often is people asking me for advice about, well, I'm on a particular board of a particular organization. We come to council to ask for money or grants or other necessary things. And can I continue to be on that board? And the answer is you can't have it both ways. You can't be there advocating for someone as a member of their board, and at the same time being a member who determines whether they're going to get what they've asked for. So you've got to be very alive to that. And one of the things that I'm recommending to people is, you know, if you're dealing with an organization or part of an organization like that, you really have to consider whether you're putting yourself in a conflict of interest and whether you should be continuing in that role. So that's just something you may want to think about. Next slide, number 17, and that is dealing with confidentiality. You must abide by the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. You'll see a slide shortly that I think will give you some guidance around that. There can be no unauthorized disclosure of information that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. There can be no misuse of confidential information that may cause benefit or detriment to the member or others. Members have a continuing obligation to keep information confidential, even if the member ceases to be a member of council. And there can be no unauthorized disclosure in respect of a closed session of council. You know, I had a situation where there was a closed meeting, and following the closed meeting, the member spoke to his own personal lawyer about what had transpired at that meeting, and even that is improper, because that lawyer was not the lawyer who was representing the municipality, and it was deemed that he breached the issue around confidentiality in closed sessions. So I think it's something you've got to be very, very cognizant of when you leave a closed session meeting, unless council has authorized you to speak. So it's very important to understand those obligations. Some examples of confidential information are on slide 18, including personal information under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, human resource or personal letters, human resource issues dealing with employees, advice on litigation or potential litigation that you might be privy to, items under negotiation, labor relations, employment issues, or acquisition of municipal assets, all very confidential. Information regarding contract tenders, all of those discussions and the information that you're privy to is confidential and very important that it remains so. The next slide, slide number 19, deals with personal information under the Protection of Privacy Act, and I leave it for you to take a look at. But I do want to point out, you're going to get lots of letters. You're going to get lots of correspondence, and correspondence sent to an institution by the individual that is implicitly or explicitly of a private or confidential nature, and replies to that correspondence that would reveal the contents of the original correspondence or something that has to be kept confidential. I'll give you an example. One of a municipality sanctioned an event. They didn't put the event on. It was put on by another organization, but council supported it. And a member of the public didn't like this event, sent an email to council, and council or a member of council made that email public, causing potentially significant damage to an individual. This went to the Information and Privacy Commissioner, who said this was a private document. Even though it was sent to council, it was deemed to be a private document. So, I think you've got to be very, very careful about what documents you release, how you release them, and whether you release them. And oftentimes, it is well worth checking with the municipality's legal counsel to see if indeed you can release certain information. So take a look at slide 19 at your leisure, but I think that gives you some sense of confidential documents under the Municipal Protection of Privacy Act. Going on to slide number 20, and this is a very important area, which deals with the relationship between elected and staff of a municipality. Only council as a whole, and no single member, including the mayor, has the authority to direct staff, approve budgets, policy, and other matters unless specifically authorized by council. Members shall be respectful of the fact that staff are required to provide objective advice while remaining neutral, carry out directions of council, and administer the policies of the city without undue influence from any member. Members shall direct any staff performance concerns to the chief administrative officer. No member shall maliciously or falsely impugn or without sufficient cause criticize the professional or ethical reputation of any staff. Members shall not compel staff to engage in partisan political activities or subject staff to threat or discrimination for refusing to engage in such activities. And no member shall use their authority or influence to threaten, intimidate, or coerce staff or interfere with the lawful exercise of the duties of staff or their professional or legal obligations. And I want to touch on a couple of things around that. Generally, policy is something that council drives. Operations of the day-to-day operations of the municipality are turned over to the chief administrative officer, who in turn delegates to senior management. And I think, like any board of directors, it's up to staff to run the operations. It's up to council to direct policy and oversee the operations, but not to direct those operations. And I think it's very important to understand those roles. There was a municipality that became deeply embroiled in issues around this, with one councillor deciding that he had authority to hire and fire people. It caused significant consternation within that municipality, and significant HR issues. So I think it's really important to understand the nature of that relationship. I do want to say one other thing, and it's an area where, and it comes up, there are numerous cases reported about this, and that is dealing with bylaw officers. One thing that is sacrosanct in the law in Canada is that politicians don't direct or coerce or pressure those charged with enforcing bylaws. And that includes bylaw officers, peace officers, police. Elected politicians have no authority to do that. People have elected members at various levels of government have gotten into significant trouble as a result of those kinds of issues. So I raise that. There's nothing wrong with council passing bylaws and debating policy, but getting involved in an individual case that a bylaw officer or a peace officer or a police officer is involved with, and trying to coerce the police in any way or having any discussion with them is out of line and improper. And I think it's very important, again, to be alive to that. I think, you get complaints from constituents all the time that something isn't right, and you come into you contact people who are in charge of these operations. The safest way is always to go through the CAO or one of the senior management folks who are in charge of the various departments. I think you can run into trouble when you're talking to people at lower levels because they feel pressured. I think it's always a good idea, if you have complaints from constituents, to deal with them through the CAO or the CAO's direct reports. I think that's the best way to stay out of trouble. I think it's an area that gives rise to complaints. So you should be aware of that. Moving on to slide 21, and that deals with gifts. I leave that to you to read over yourself. It's pretty straightforward. I think I do want to point out that you do have an obligation, I think, to file a disclosure of a gift or benefit with the city clerk within 30 days of the receipt of the gift. So that's something you want to be aware of. I think, today, unlike years past, I mean, if somebody's going to take you to a Leaf hockey game and out for dinner, I think it's, unless it's a friend and it's not related to anything or anybody doing business with the municipality, that may be fine. But if it is, somebody who does business with the municipality, I think you got to say no and be forceful about it. And there are specified exclusions such as tokens, mementos, souvenirs, gifts of a nominal value received as an incident to protocol. But beyond that, I think the safest bet is not to accept gifts. And I think you're to be aware that that a gift to your spouse, child, or parent, or to one of your staff members that's connected directly or indirectly with the performance of your duties is deemed to be a gift to you. So something to be aware of. The next section, again, I think these are pretty self-explanatory. Talks about the use of municipal property for activities relevant to your role as a member. That's the only time you can use municipal property, and that's for activities relevant to your role as a member. So I leave that to you. There is an exemption for city-issued devices such as an iPad or cell phone, and I'll leave that to you. And again, the next section involving political activity and work, I think, is very straightforward. I leave that to you as well. I do point out that there are harassment provisions in the Code of Conduct. Members shall not harass any other member, staff, or any member of the public. Members shall observe and comply with any workplace harassment and workplace violence policies of the city. Harassment is defined in accordance with the Ontario Human Rights Code as vexatious comment or conduct that is unwelcome or ought reasonably to be known to be unwelcome. Harassment or bullying another member, staff, or any member of the public is misconduct. Workplace bullying is defined as repeated unreasonable behavior directed towards an employee or a group of staff that creates a risk to health and safety. Unreasonable behavior can be defined as behavior that harms, intimidates, threatens, victimizes, undermines, offends, degrades, or humiliates another staff member. So I think it's important to be very cognizant of that section and to remember that much of this is subjective. So it's, again, something I think to be kept top of mind. The next section deals with expenditures and purchases. Again, I think quite self-explanatory. And I guess slide 26 says that members shall encourage the public, prospective contractors, and members of the public and their colleagues to abide by the city's bylaws, policies, and procedures, including the code, and members shall accurately communicate the decisions of council, even if they disagree with the majority decision of council. I want to say a word in section 16 about social media. Members shall adhere to any and all city policies and guidelines regarding social media. Members shall always identify themselves without any attempt to cover, disguise, or mislead their identity or status as an elected representative of the city when using social media. No member shall use social media to publish anything that is dishonest, untrue, offensive, disrespectful, constitutes harassment, or is defamatory or misleading in any way. And that's pretty comprehensive, broad brush approach to social media. Couple of things. Social media I guess, and as a former politician, I was around before the days of social media, so I don't know much about how it's used. I don't really understand much about it, other than to say I've seen a number of people get in trouble because they use it, and they often have public and private accounts, and they basically will say, well, what I said was in a private account to a limited number of people who only I can admit as my friends, or however the system happens to work. And that's no defense. The fact that it might be private, nothing is private anymore. Anything that's private can become public. So I think it's very important that you understand the scope of this particular section. Another thing about social media, there's nothing wrong with posting your opinion, but be warned that people will disagree with your opinion, and they will use those early sections of the code, perhaps, to bring a complaint. So I think it's very important that you be aware of that. You can express your opinion, but people will disagree. Complaints will follow. So I urge you to be careful and understand what the ramifications can be. But as I say, if you're expressing your opinion, you're entitled to do that. I was involved in a case where someone used social media to do some polling and framed a polling question that was highly misleading, and a complaint came as a result of that. So again, social media may be a great way to communicate with folks, but remember that it is a two-edged sword. So you must be very careful in the use you make of social media. And I just want to conclude this section by talking a little bit about the role of the Integrity Commissioner in section. And as I said earlier, the Integrity Commissioner deals with the application of the code, and the application of any procedures, rules, policies of the city and local boards concerning the ethical behavior of members, the application of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and requests from members for advice. And that includes members of council and members of local boards. And it deals with requests for advice respecting their obligations under a procedure, rule, or policy of the city. And as well, requests for advice respecting obligations under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. I also provide educational information to members and any other services that might be set out in the contract for the provision of services with the city and the Integrity Commissioner. Requests for advice, as I said earlier, the most frequent requests revolve around conflict of interest, and they are often related to belonging to an organization. And I don't want to repeat again, but I think those are the areas that I most frequently see requests for advice. and I'm going to shortly go into the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. One of the things that happens with requests for advice is that people see the agenda for council, and they usually see it a short time before a council meeting, which leaves little time. They then contact me, and they want a very fast opinion as to what they should do when the item comes up at council a couple of days later. I don't know how early you see your materials before a council meeting, but it's really important to go through the agenda as soon as you see it. If there is an issue, I can only respond if you ask me in writing for advice. It must be in writing, and I have to respond to you in writing. I will often get your request and arrange a phone call to clarify facts, and then I will provide my opinion, which you can rely on as long as the facts that you've provided and that I've sought clarification on, and that I will outline in my letter of advice are in fact the facts. If that is indeed the case, you can rely on my advice if someone ultimately brings a complaint. If the facts are otherwise, it'll be harder for you to rely on my advice. But one of the things that I endeavor to do, I endeavor to get back to people as fast as I possibly can. I know somewhere in here, I think it says 10 days. I don't know that we've ever taken 10 days unless the person has called us and said, or we've spoken to the person and they said, I don't need this right away, not to worry. It's for down the road. But usually there's an urgency to it. We endeavor to get to people as fast as we possibly can. If I'm not available, the ADR Chambers, who I work through, has other people that I can delegate to, who are also integrity commissioners or investigators familiar with codes of conduct. And in my absence, they would provide you with the advice. We endeavor to do that as quickly as we possibly can, because we know that you need it. And just a word about process. Appended to the Code of Conduct is Appendix A. It sets out the process for a complaint. Complaints have to be brought within 6 weeks of a person learning of the behavior that they're complaining of, and there's an ultimate limitation of 6 months. Appendix A deals with the code. Appendix B deals with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act and sets out the times. Mostly they're times that I have to adhere to, and it's mostly direction to me. But I leave it to you to read the procedure. It's quite straightforward, and if you're ever in that situation and there are issues, we will walk you through it. Not to worry. And just a word of to you, and that is that the Code of Conduct should be updated periodically in case just to deal with changes that might be out there. And I am available to speak with the clerk, CAO, or any members of council delegated to talk to me about that, if my help would be wanted. So that really concludes the aspect dealing with the Code of Conduct. Are there any questions before we get into the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act?
Yes. I'll go to Councillor McDonald first, then I'll go to Councillor Joyce and Councillor Warren.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Two questions. One, you mentioned about we aren't supposed to meet with developers. We've had lots of developers that have called us to say, hey, we're coming into town and we're going to be in your ward or so on. So Could you answer that question?
Yeah, I'm only taking a look at your process or the wording that you have, but I think if there's something on the agenda that makes a difference, you may be a little more reluctant to meet with somebody once it's on the agenda. Prior to that, it's your call. I don't think you're doing anything wrong, personally. If that's the simple facts. But I think you do have to be careful, and most of the larger municipalities now deal with having a registry, a lobby registry, so that the public transparently knows who you're meeting with. But I think it's once it's on the agenda, you may want to be a little more cautious. But I don't think there's anything wrong with people coming along and saying, we like your community. We may want to be involved in some projects. We're looking at some land to buy, or houses to build, or whatever it is they want to do. We're looking to bring a business to the community. Those are all fair game to be talked about.
Okay, thank you. And the second,
as long as you have no other conflict of interest involving it.
Right. And second question is that you said we can't sit on boards that ask for money. We all sit on boards, and every one of them are asking for money.
You probably sit on boards as a delegated person from council. But many people are also on boards that are not appointed through council. And I think it's really, really important to understand the conflict that you're in when you're a member of that organization coming to council asking for something, and then at the same time being on council. And it may be enough to declare your conflict and step aside, and we're going to talk about that shortly. But if it's something that is going to be a regular feature, you may want to consider whether it's a good idea to stay on that board or not. And I'm a conservative person. I look at these things and say, how do we avoid? How does a member avoid trouble? And I just think that you got to be very, very careful. And we're going to talk about it shortly with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and you may want to bring this back up after you see some of those details.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Harnick. Just one question. Receiving gifts nominal value. The interpretation of nominal could be $5 with one person or $50 with another. Can you narrow that down to what's a dollar value for nominal?
I really can't, other than to take a look at the words of the code. Nominal value, token, memento, I think all factor into the determination, if indeed that it ever comes before me. So it's hard for me to place a dollar value on that. So I think you have to be really careful. Is it a memento? Is it a token of appreciation, or is it a weekend in Vegas? I think you have to be really, really careful with gifts. And as I say, the other pitfall is gifts to members of your staff, gifts to your spouse, gifts to your children, are all gifts to you as the member. So you've got to be very, very careful about that. So I wish I could be more specific, but I think it really will depend on the facts of any given situation. And it's not just the dollars, but is it a memento? Is it of that kind of is it a token? Is it a memento? All of which connote something very very small. So I hope that's helpful.
Yep, that's very helpful. I was just going to say no gifts. Thank you.
Councillor Warren.
That's the best approach.
Councillor Warren.
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted. You're muted.
Great. Sorry about that. Yes, in the previous presentation, I asked a question and they said to put it to you, but this may come under the next part of your presentation on conflict of interest. But the question is, what kind of conflict of interest infraction would lead to the removal of a councillor? Because that was in the previous presentation. And I thought, oh my goodness. And conflict of interest? Like, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I should mention this, and I'm glad you brought it up. The only thing that I can do, and this is what the Municipal Act permits, I can recommend a reprimand, or I can recommend a suspension of remuneration up to 90 days. That's the only things that I can do under the Code of Conduct. Under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, if someone is deemed to have been in a conflict and not declared it, if it's there's a discretion in the Integrity Commissioner to deal with it within the jurisdiction that the Integrity Commissioner has, which is reprimand or suspension of remuneration, and generally it would be under equivalent sections which you have in your code to what the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act says. If it's a very serious matter, and you've seen some of these reported, but if it's a very serious matter, the Integrity Commissioner can recommend that the matter be referred to a judge, and the report of the Integrity Commissioner would go to a judge. The parties would appear before the judge, providing the materials that they want to file before the judge, and ultimately the judge would determine, based on the findings of the Integrity Commissioner, the penalty, which can be as severe as removing a person as an elected member, suspending them from being able to be an elected member for many years, or forever, I believe. So that's in the most severe circumstances. So I hope that that answers your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, severe. So anyway, maybe somewhere through your
it would be a very significant. I suppose if you had something like the computer scandal that happened at the city of Toronto many years ago, where there was a conflict found. I think that there are a number of other situations, and there's a lot of case law on this. Just beginning to see case law around referrals to a judge. It used to be these things went directly to the judge without the Integrity Commissioner being involved. But this is all relatively new in the Integrity Commissioner world since March of 2019. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. If you can continue with your presentation, Mr. Harnick.
Thank you. The next area I want to go through is the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which begins at slide 34. And I'm going to try and walk you through the most important areas of the Act. And it's still, you should still read the Act in its entirety. It's a very short Act, and it's pretty straightforward. But I'm going to try and touch on the most important aspects of it. First off, an elector or person demonstrably acting in the public interest may apply in writing to the Integrity Commissioner for an inquiry into an alleged contravention of sections 5, 5.1, or 5.2 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act by a member of council or a member of a local board. So it doesn't just have to be an elector. It can be a person demonstrably acting in the public interest. So that's a pretty broad group of people who can begin the process of a complaint under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And a written request with respect to possible contravention of the of section 5, 5.1, or 5.2 will be processed in accordance with Appendix B of the Code of Conduct. And again, that is just, once the complaint comes in, how long do you have to respond to it? How long does the complainant have to reply to the response? And basically, it's the time limits that I would have to comply with as the claim and the investigation and report proceeds. Now, I want to get into Section 2 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. A member has an indirect pecuniary interest in any matter in which the council or local board is concerned if the member or his nominee is a shareholder in or a director or senior officer of a corporation that does not offer its securities to the public, has a controlling interest in or is a director or senior officer of a corporation that offers its securities to the public, or is a member of a body. So if you're a shareholder of a corporation or a shareholder of a corporation offering securities to the public, or a member of a body, you have a pecuniary interest through that entity. That entity does not shelter you in terms of a pecuniary interest. And it also says that a member has an indirect pecuniary interest if the member is a partner of a person or is in the employment of a person or body that has a pecuniary interest in the matter. So, spouse, employer, or a body that has a pecuniary interest in the matter means that pecuniary interest is yours. So that is an indirect pecuniary interest. Interestingly enough, pecuniary interest is not defined. It can be positive or negative. So if you have a pecuniary interest and out of that pecuniary interest you lost money, you still have to declare the interest. It's either, it doesn't matter whether it's a positive or a negative interest. So important to note that. For the purpose, and I'm up to slide 36 now, for the purposes of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, the pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, of a parent or the spouse of it, or any child of the member shall, if known to the member, be deemed to be also the pecuniary interest of the member. So if your spouse has a pecuniary interest, you have it. If your parent has a pecuniary interest, you have it. Or if your child has a pecuniary interest, it's yours, if it is known to the member. So that is something to be very cognizant of. Dealing with Section 5, where a member has any pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, in any matter, and is present at a meeting of council or local board at which the matter is the subject of consideration, the member shall, prior to any consideration of the matter at the meeting, disclose the interest and the general nature thereof. And in every one of your meetings, you've got a disclosure of pecuniary interest. That is not to be taken lightly. The fact that it's there is to remind you, if you've got a pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, you've got to declare it at the meeting. And once declared, you shall not take part in the discussion of or vote on any question in respect of the matter, and you shall not attempt in any way, whether before, during, or after the meeting, to influence the voting on any such question. So if you know it's coming up, you can't lobby your colleagues. After the meeting, if it's gone through first reading and it has another reading to go through, and that won't happen for a month, or you're waiting for a report from staff, you can't attempt in any way to influence the voting. And if the matter takes place in camera, in addition to complying with the above requirements, the member shall leave the meeting or the part of the meeting during which the matter is under consideration. So, I think, commentators and lawyers have said, once you disclose the conflict, it's good to leave an open meeting and not stay. And then you're, beyond reproach. But certainly where the meeting is in camera, you must leave the meeting. If by some chance the matter comes up at a meeting for the first time and you are not at that meeting, you're absent, where the interest of the member has not been disclosed by reason of the member's absence from the meeting, the member shall disclose the interest and otherwise comply with the disclosure requirements at the first meeting of council or local board attended by the member after the meeting. So that's a continuing obligation. And going on to slide 39, at a meeting at which a member discloses an interest under Section 5, or as soon as possible afterwards, the member shall file a written statement of the interest and its general nature with the clerk or the secretary of the committee or local board, as the case may be. So those are all of your obligations under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. The time limitation set out under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, all requests must be submitted within 6 weeks of the complainant becoming aware of the alleged contravention and no more than 6 months after the alleged violation. And I think the 6 months after the alleged violation is the code. The MCIA is 6 weeks, I believe. So you should be cognizant of those limitation periods. And that really takes us through the section dealing with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And let me pause for some questions, if there are any.
I'm not seeing any.
All right.
You can continue. Thank you.
I just want to finish up by saying that when a complaint comes in, and I'm dealing with, I guess, slide 43. When a complaint comes in with respect to noncompliance with the code of conduct or the MCIA, I look and see whether it's a complaint covered by another complaint procedure, whether the complaint should be pursued under other legislation, whether there is unrelated criminal activity involved, whether it's vexatious or in bad faith, whether there's an issue with respect to timing. In other words, is it outside of the limitation period or is it too close to an election? And I go through that review before I accept a complaint and begin my formal investigation. After the complaint is then distributed to the respondent, the respondent has an opportunity to respond. The complainant has an opportunity to reply to the response, and I then begin the investigation, interviewing the parties and any witnesses, and ultimately write a report with my recommendation in it. In terms of the city of Kawartha Lakes, if there is no breach of the code, I do not. It is not published and doesn't go to council. If there is a breach of the code, it does go to council for review of the recommendation and penalty. Council provides the ultimate penalty, and that really completes my presentation. As I said, my role in terms of penalties by statute are I can recommend a reprimand or a suspension of remuneration up to 90 days. And if indeed I experience instances of interference, obstruction, or retaliation, I will make interim reports to council to address those matters. It is up to the Integrity Commissioner in his final report to disclose in those reports such matters as I consider necessary for the purposes of the report. So things that I believe have to be in the public domain are, if it's a situation where I think a complainant should be anonymized, I will do that. I don't do that often, but there are situations where that would be the case. But that essentially completes my presentation, and happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I think you were pretty comprehensive in your coverage and covered the salient things that council needed to know. And certainly with the slide deck we have and can go through, I'm not seeing any further questions other than the ones you received during the presentation. So I just want to say thank you for your time today, and thank you for putting the presentation together and putting it on for us, because I think it's important for council to know what they're faced with as they do their duties as councillors. So thank you very much. And we appreciate your coming today, and I'll look for a motion to receive the presentation. Councillor Warren, Councillor MacDonald, all in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Harnick.
much, and the best to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye. We were supposed to review the procedural bylaw and review the code of conduct. You just had a pretty good look at the code of conduct, but I'm just going to ask the CAO to speak to the procedural bylaw for a couple of minutes, And I know we have another meeting starting at 7 o'clock, so, and we promised to be finished by 5. So I'll turn it over to the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, it looks like I already broke the promise, then it's 5:01. But I will try to sort of wrap up and maybe just provide you with some next steps so that, again, a lot of information today. I think it's critical and important information, and that we start the conversation. You heard there's a number of resources for you as council members to consult with, whether it's internal with staff, through the clerk's office formally. Our integrity commissioner is available to you for advice ongoing, and I strongly recommend, when in doubt, reach out to him and that firm directly. But we want to make sure that you feel comfortable that those resources are there. I will say, I'll start with the code of conduct, and I won't take long because the integrity commissioner essentially walked you through what your current code of conduct states. That is a council policy, so it's your policy, it's your code. We are required to have it by legislation, and every term of council, one of your policies is to review all of your council policies within your term of council. So it will be inclusive of this code of conduct. You're not finished with it. So over time, we will set up sessions with you and provide reports through to council on many of the policies, this included. So that would be your opportunity if you wanted to have sections reviewed, just general information, that will be available to you. And in fact, the code of conduct we'll be doing in the early part of your term. I will say that it was updated a couple times in the last term of council, and particularly it was updated after the Integrity Commissioner had suggested in 2019 there was a lot of legislation changes and a requirement for an Integrity Commissioner. So the current code is, in my opinion, quite up to date, certainly in terms of the recent legislation. And the last note I'll say on this particular topic is ADR Chambers. So Charles Harnick is a member of that group. They are actually the Integrity Commissioner. So on occasion, there will be other individuals in that firm that may do the investigations or provide the advice to you. But that firm is your designated Integrity Commissioner. We have a contractual arrangement with them. They've been the same Integrity Commissioner for 4 years now. So they were put in place in 2019, right after the last elections and when the new legislation came into effect. We are moving forward with renewing. We have one final extension in that contractual arrangement. It's every 2 years, and based on sort of performance and annual reporting of the Integrity Commissioner. So we will be entering into that final extension. So ADRM Chambers will be your Integrity Commissioner for the next 2 years. We will be updating at that sort of term, at the end of that term. We will be coming to you seeking direction in terms of a new contract with the same firm or going out more generally to seek those services in a different manner. But I just wanted you to be comfortable that they're in place now, and they'll be in place for the next 2 years. So unless there's any sort of specific questions on the code of conduct, maybe for the public too, it was published in the agenda today. So that code is there. It is also available online on the city's website. And so certainly, if not today, over the period of time, any questions that you might have, again, pose them through to staff and or through to the Integrity Commissioner directly. On the procedural bylaw, again, it is published and available in this agenda. The intent was to provide it to you sort of publicly, and certainly recognizing our time constraints today. Again, I think this is the beginning of that conversation. So over time, we're going to have other orientation sessions where we'll talk about your policies that affect you and your business, as well as those bylaws. The procedural one is the key one. I would suggest, from your perspective as council members, it governs how business is conducted, what your roles are in more detail, and even the functions and operations within formal meetings. So I definitely encourage you to familiarize yourself with that document that's in the agenda. And maybe I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor, for now. And certainly if there's any questions today, though, I think either myself or the clerk, we would try to answer them, or we'll certainly refer them and get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the CAO on procedural bylaw? You did get a book with procedural bylaw in it, and you know, anytime you have any questions about it, you can certainly bring them up. So I need a motion to receive the verbal from the CAO. Councillor Joyce, Councillor Smeaton, all in favor? And that's passed. Councillor Warren, did you have a question? Okay. Moving on. I need a confirming bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special meeting of council February 2nd, 2023. That the proceedings of the special council meeting held Thursday, February 2nd, 2023 be read a first, second, and third time, passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Richardson, Councillor Warren. All in favor? And that's passed. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Smeaton, Councillor Joyce. All in favor? And that's passed. So we're back here for 7 o'clock. We did bring something in, so you don't have to go out.